because there's one that had your full name on it, and
Yeah.
it was the dragon, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And that one was, you were like pretty young then, weren't you? Like that was like quite a few years ago.
Yeah, probably 7 maybe.
Yeah, 7 years old.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like it was like 4 or 5 years ago, wasn't it? Maybe 4 years ago.
Yeah.
I remember because you came in and you were like very specific. We were asking you what you wanted. You're like, it will be this color of a dragon. It will say this bubble that will say this, that will say my full name. It was a very cool cake.
Yeah. Yeah, everyone really, really liked it.
Oh, good. That's the important part.
Yeah.
How's school going this semester?
My mom's homeschooling me
Nice. How do you like it?
a lot.
Yeah. Cool. Is that your first time doing homeschool?
Yep, we just started this year.
Cool. Do you have any friends who are doing that too?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Her mom owns a hair salon in her backyard.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, her name's Evelyn.
That's cool.
Yeah.
You get your hair cut there?
Yeah, her name's Courtney.
That's
Yeah,
cool.
she made her salon in her backyard. It's called Backyard Beauty.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, she's
That's
really
a good idea.
Mhm. Yeah.
Wonder if I should do a backyard bakery.
That would be cool.
Yeah, that would be really cool.
We're gonna wait.
Sometimes,
Oh, sorry.
no, you're fine.
We're gonna wait.
Sometimes people have like, then we both just did it again. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No worries. We're going to wait just a couple more minutes to start, but I wanted to remind you girls that you're all welcome to turn on your videos. This will be recorded, however. We're going to be posting them after the fact, so if you don't have parent permission to maybe be on the recordings that we're going to post, just make sure to turn your video off, but otherwise we'd love to see your bright and smiling faces. Go ahead, Angela.
Oh, I was just going to say, as far as like a backyard bakery, I feel like people make pizza ovens in their backyard, so maybe I could just make like a pastry oven in my backyard.
That's a cute idea.
Ideas.
We'll probably wait one more minute.
There's so many pieces of equipment in the kitchen here that I feel like it's always kind of loud. So I try to put my AirPods in because then maybe like you can hear me better, but I'm sorry if you can hear like the rumbling of the refrigeration in the background.
I can't hear any background noise. I think you're good.
Wow, great. Amazing.
What do you think, Akriti? Should we get started?
Sure, let's go for it.
Okay, so just a quick introduction for anyone who doesn't know Angela. Angela Garbacz is the chef and owner of Goldenrod Pastries here in Lincoln. I'm a big fan of Goldenrod, very tasty place. And she's the author of a recipe book. And I thought this quote was really cool. She was called one of the most innovative women in food and drink by Food and Wine. So we're super, super excited to have her in this speaker series. And yeah, I just can't wait to hear about your background and what it's like to be the owner of a business.
Yeah, so if you have any questions while I'm talking, I know we're gonna wait, we have some time at the end too, but if I'm talking about anything and you have any questions, I'm okay if Akriti and Ryan are okay with it. Like I'm fine with you just jumping out too and asking questions. Because I want to talk about stuff that's interesting to you, so definitely speak up. So as you just heard, I have this bakery here. I'm in it right now. I thought I would sit in the kitchen so you could see where I do a lot of the work and where my team does a lot of the work. But I opened my business about 6 years ago, and I actually started it online. I started it just as a blog because I was doing a job that I wasn't super happy with anymore. It wasn't really making me feel super inspired. And so I started a blog and I started talking about food. And I had been trained professionally in pastries at a pastry school in New York City, and I went to the university in Lincoln for food science. So I had done all of this training, but then I ended up in a job that I didn't really love. And so I started this blog to share recipes and talk about how I had to teach myself how to make dairy-free treats. So my blog was a way for me to stay really creative in my life and also do the thing that I really love to do, which was bake. So I shared recipes and I shared stories about my life, and I shared this information on like Instagram and Facebook too. And all of a sudden people started placing a bunch of orders with me. And I realized that there were all of these people who needed to be dairy-free too, or gluten-free, or just needed to eat a certain way, or they just wanted a new bakery. So I opened my bakery, Goldenrod Pastries, about a year after I started my business online. And I started it as the only employee because I had never run a business before. And I also was really scared to have a team of people that worked for me because I had never been a manager before. And I was really scared about that. And so I did a lot of the work for myself for a long time, and I slowly started to add to my team. And now I have about a dozen people working for me, and they're almost all women, almost all girls. And what has been really cool about that is it's not really traditional in my industry. So in the food industry, there's a lot of men, and there's not a lot of full kitchens that are just girls. And so what I thought was really cool about that was that it was an opportunity to learn how to work really well with other women and how to create really good relationships and build each other up and empower each other. And once I realized that I had this cool opportunity of working with some really awesome girls, I felt like it was really easy to be their manager, and it was really easy to lead them, because the most important thing to me is to create good relationships. And so, yes, I'm in a kitchen. I do a lot of baking. I make really delicious treats, but I feel like the most important thing that we do, especially when we're I feed people. I love to feed people. It makes me really happy. But the most important thing that we do, to me, anywhere we are, is build relationships. And if I'm building really positive relationships with the people that I work with, it makes my job really easy. So that's a very kind of short story about what I've been doing. I think it's really important to empower other women and to build strong relationships with them. And, you know, when I was starting my business, I had some friends who really listened to what I wanted to do. So when I said that I wanted to open a bakery, they didn't just say, "Oh, cool, that sounds fun." They said, "What will it look like? What will be on your menu? What color will you paint it? What will your hours be?" So they asked me really specific questions about what I wanted to do, instead of just saying, "Oh, cool, that sounds fun." They really asked me questions, and they really made me think about what I wanted to do. And I always think about that when I talk to other friends, or when people come into my bakery and they want advice. I always think about those friends who really impacted me when I got started in my business by asking me specific questions that really made me think, and that really empowered me, and that really inspired me to make more decisions to keep my passion in my business moving forward. So when your friends come to you and they tell you an idea, or when you're working on an idea, I think it can be really helpful to ask your friends those questions, like specifically, okay, so you want to, I'm not super, like, I know that you're all a lot better with like coding and computer stuff than I am, so I'm not going to pretend. But like if your friend says that they have like, oh, they want to write a book, like they want to write like a short story. Okay, cool. So what are the characters' names? What, does it take place? What time of year is it set in? Like asking really specific questions so that you can help empower them and inspire them to keep moving forward with their idea, I think is really important. And that's something that really good friends do. And you can really help people with their passions. So another thing that I have done was I had my first cookbook published this year, and it came out in April. And this is something that I always wanted to do from the time that I was like, oh, I don't know. I think I got my first cookbook when I was 6 or 7, and I always knew that I wanted to have one and write one myself. So it was something I always wanted to do. And when I started my blog before I opened my business, this was always in the back of my mind of like, okay, this is something I really, really want to do. So what do I have to do? What steps do I have to take to make sure that I can do this thing that I really, really want to do, which was write a cookbook? And that meant that there were a lot of things that I had to do, but I had to make a business that was successful and make treats that were really, really good and make a difference. And so those were kind of my steps to get to the point of writing my cookbook. And I will open it up and show you a couple things from it, but I shared recipes that like I made at home with my family, with my mom and my dad and my grandma, my siblings. And I shared recipes that we made together at the bakery. And some of the recipes are my own, and some of the recipes my coworkers helped come up with, and I wrote about them in the book to make sure that they got credit. But this was something that I always wanted to do. So it was always like in my mind, so that I knew that that was like a goal. So what do I have to do to get to my goal? Oh, this is a good one. The big stack of brownies.
Nice.
Yeah. And so this book is a culmination of, oh my gosh, and it's almost pumpkin pie season. So here's some pumpkin pie. And this is a culmination of like so many years of work and dreams that I had from the time that I was like younger than you all are. But it's always been like a goal. So it's always something that I thought about, like, okay, if I want to have this cookbook, then what do I need to work on in school? What do I need to work on when I'm home? And how can I keep trying new recipes and keep changing recipes to be my own? So I'm not taking other people's recipes, but making them my own. And so I think that like having this goal, this like really, really long-term goal where I'm always thinking about like, how can I do this one thing? It really helped to frame everything that I've done. And hopefully I'll do a second one. I know this has been an unusual year, but this came out this year, and I was ready to start a second one, but it's just been kind of a wild year. But I won't let that stop me. I know you're all having like kind of a weird year too with school and everything, so you get it. So yeah, that's kind of a short story about what I do. I also, this is kind of cool. I work with a girl who's in New York City. She's also a pastry chef, and her name's Carolyn. And I followed her on Instagram for, I don't know, like 3 years. And I thought she was so cool. And she was making stuff that I thought was really beautiful. And she seemed like a really, really nice person, but I didn't know her. And I mean, you can make friends through social media, but I wasn't friends with her through social media. I was just really inspired by what she was doing. And so I started this campaign that I do every March, which is Women's History Month. And this thing that I started, this campaign, is called Empower Through Flour. And so the goal is that we can get female chefs all over the country and people who own restaurants and businesses, we can get them all together to create one pastry item, and a portion of that, they donate the money from that item to an organization that empowers young women and young girls like you and helps to fight for, you know, equality and making sure that there's a really awesome future for you all. And so to get back to Carolyn, the girl that I had met on the internet, I reached out to her and I said, hey, Carolyn, this is this thing I want to do. It's called Empower Through Flour. And I really, really love what you're doing. And I'm really inspired by what you're doing. Would you want to help me with this? And so now we are co-founders and we work on it together, and she's one of my friends and we talk to each other a lot. And I think that I like to tell that story because it was somebody that I really was inspired by, and she also was doing something that I thought was really, really cool. And I didn't know her, and I was a little bit like intimidated, a little bit scared to talk to her. But when I just told her that I thought that what she was doing was really cool and asked her to do something with me, like we became friends through it. And so that's something that I always tell people when I talk to them is, instead of thinking that other girls, other people are your competition, just remember that like when you work together and you find a way to do projects together, especially with people that you really admire and you really are inspired by the work that they're doing, you can create some really cool things together. And sometimes it's even cooler and even more interesting than if you did it by yourself. So I'm wondering if there's anything that you have questions about or that you want to like talk about specifically. I saw a lot of people typing in saying that they love baking. We can talk about baking if you want. But yeah, let me know what you are interested in. You made oatmeal chocolate chip cookies.
Maggie said she made pretzels for the first time. Theta made oatmeal chocolate chip cookies. I'm impressed with both those. That's really cool.
Yes. My favorite thing to make are cinnamon rolls. I'll show you a picture in here. I made them with my grandma a lot, and she was my favorite person to bake with.
Oh.
I really like all of these pictures.
Yum.
So it was really fun to make this book because we got to plan how it was going to look and got to explain to people, like, through these pictures, it shows all the different steps of making the cinnamon rolls. So it's really fun to find a way to explain to people through pictures how to do something. And sometimes in cookbooks, there aren't very many pictures, or they don't show you exactly how to do something. So I wanted to find a way to make sure to show people how that happens.
Yeah.
I love that. I'm curious, you said that when you were starting out your business, there were some friends who were super enthusiastic and they'd ask you really good questions. Did you receive any like negative comments like, oh, I don't know if that'll work? And if so, like, how did you approach that criticism?
Yeah, I'm really good at forgetting the bad things that people say, actually, but there were some people who thought, oh, this will just be like a really fun hobby for her, and didn't really take it seriously, or said, one thing that I heard a lot was like, this is like a fun little thing for you to do. And I have heard a lot of people say like, oh, there's this little thing I'm doing. And there was a woman that I talked to once, and she interrupted me when I said like, oh yeah, this about my bakery. And she said, I want you to stop right there and never talk about your business that way again. It is your business. It is not a little business. It is not a little thing that you're doing. It is your business. It is your job. It is your career. It is your project. And I've heard some other friends who have businesses as well who, like, for example, there's a store next to mine who sells like really cool stuff for your house and stuff for babies, and very, very cool stuff. And she said that, you know, some people would say the same things to her, like, how's your little hobby going? And I think it's really important to remember that anything that you're choosing to do, like, I chose to have this bakery, and it's not a little bakery. It's not a little job. It is my job, and it is my career, and it's what I have chosen to do. And I think that it's really easy for people to downplay the importance of what they're doing. And, you know, you're working on a new app, or you're working on a new project. Like, you can always remind yourself that what you're doing is really important. And so there will always be people, unfortunately, who will say kind of weird, just rude things. But I personally pretend that I never heard them, because for the most part, it's not constructive. And if somebody has something constructive and something helpful to say, sometimes that's really, really hard to hear, and it can feel kind of rude. But if it's actually coming from a good place and they offer you constructive advice, then it's important to take that. But if people are just trying to bring you down, I say pretend it never happened and push it out of your brain.
Good point. That's good advice.
That's what I do. So yeah, I know if I talk to my mom a lot, and if I call her and talk to her about this, I'll say, oh yeah, I couldn't remember anything bad that people had said. She'll be like, oh, you don't remember? This person said this person said that. I'd be like, oh yeah, I do remember all of that now. But it's so important to remember, and like if you're doing something that is like making an impact or doing it something on a big scale, there will always be people who say kind of negative things, and that's just, I don't feel bad about it. It's just you're attracting more attention, and they will always say, the haters will always come out, but you have to remember the really positive things and always be the person. Never be that person. Always be the person who is enthusiastic for your friends, or even if it's a stranger. If you see somebody that's doing something that makes them really happy, be happy for them, be enthusiastic for them. And the difference that you can make is really, really big. Any other baking stories or questions from anyone? I know I saw some right away.
Just wondering, don't you have a location down by the mill? Or the bay, I mean.
Yeah. Oh, yes, you're right. Good points. I have both of them. I'm here at this location where I'm by the mill, and this is my first location, and I really, really like this one a lot. It's my first one. I like both of them. But I like this one because when you're in the kitchen where I am right now, you can see the customers really easily. And so right now we have these like plexiglass kind of barriers up just for like safety. But for the most part, and for all of the years before now, it's been so fun to just be able to talk to the customers, and you're so close to everybody, so you can have really great conversations and get to know each other. Before we got started here, somebody on this Zoom is actually somebody who we've made cakes for many years, and I remember helping her plan the first one that she got. So those are really fun and special things that have happened here. So then in March, we opened a second location that's by the bay. And so if you don't know, the bay is this really cool place that has a skate park in it. So you can take lessons there. I don't think they're doing them right now, unfortunately, but I'm sure they'll start up again sometime soon. And you can take skateboarding lessons, and they have a lot of really cool activities. So this weekend, actually on Saturday, there is going to be something very fun happening and very safe setup there. We have our pastry shop and coffee bar, so you can come in and get your treats. We have outdoor seating, and then I don't know if you've heard about the art bus, but it is an old school bus that a young woman renovated, and she made it into this art studio. It's a mobile art studio that she takes around Lincoln, and she is going to be at the bay this weekend on Saturday. And so you can come, and of course you have to wear your mask, but you can go onto her bus and paint and do different art activities, and it's always free. So you can come get a pastry or don't get a pastry, but the art bus will be parked outside, and you can do kind of a fun, safe art activity.
That's so fun. Elspeth, it looks like your son has a question.
Go ahead.
What recipes are in the cookbook?
Good question. So there are a lot of great recipes. So we have like cinnamon rolls and crumble buns. We make these at the store. A crumble bun is like cinnamon roll dough, but then we fill it with like jam and then put crumble on top. Oh, this is a good one. There's a whole chapter on cakes. This is yellow cake with chocolate frosting, which I never used to like, but I really like it now. I've been eating it a lot. Brownies. I love the cookie chapter, and I saw that somebody just said that they bake sugar cookies every Christmas time with their family. Let me find my favorite sugar cookie picture. Oh, well, for goodness sake, where is it? So some sugar cookies. So we have pies in here, cakes, cookies, cinnamon rolls, pecan rolls, all kinds of stuff. All my favorite things that I wanted to make a cookbook where I could open to any page and I would want to eat whatever I open it to. Like these peanut butter cookies with chocolate frosting, like who wouldn't want to eat that? I guess if you have a peanut allergy, probably not, but otherwise.
That's a good goal though. Don't just fill the recipe book to fill it, like fill it with things that you want to eat. The whole thing sounds delicious.
That's how we come up with new recipe items at the bakery. We think about like, what do we want to eat? And so when you make things that like make you really happy, then it's easy to make other people really love it. So you can't just make something just to make it. Like we're not going to make a pastry item for the pastry case just because we feel like we should make it. I think it's always important to work on projects and make things that really means something to you. And all of the treats that we make, all of the pastries that are in this book, they all mean something to somebody that I work with. And I think that that's a really important thing because you want to have a connection and a passion with what you're doing. And it's really hard to, for me at least, it's really hard for me to do something that I don't have a connection to or don't feel passionate about. And so I think that that's like a very important thing that I always try to remember is how can I make something that makes me really happy? And whether that's with your computers, whether that's like a project you're working on at school, like maybe you don't love the subject at school, but how can you find a way to make the project or the class really interesting based on something that you really love? Yeah.
So I have a question. I also follow you on Instagram and I love seeing everything you do in the community and I love the bakery. So my question for you as a professional woman that I think might be useful for kids too is finding that balance between work and doing things for yourself and for your business and to make money and also giving back to the community and finding something where you feel like you're giving to the people around you, but also making sure that you're taking care of yourself and your family and how you find that balance.
Tale as old as time. That is a tough one. For me, I really had to put a lot of trust in the people that I work with. And I think it's really, really important to trust the people that you work with, the people that you surround yourself with. For me, I'm very attached to what I do because it's mine, specifically, but I'm also, I think, I would be no matter what I'm doing, but I really trust that when I'm not here, it's being taken care of. So then when I'm home, I really try to just be home and I really try to just think about what I'm doing at my house, and really setting boundaries. So for myself, so if, one of my coworkers has a question and for some reason they think the only reason they can ask me is at 7:30 on Friday night, well, that's like my time. I'm like winding down for the weekend, or not the weekend because I work on Saturday morning, but I'm winding down for the night. And I think it's really important to just not answer and to set up that expectation for people that I'm at home, I'm doing stuff that I do at home. And I think that that's like the most important thing for me is just like trusting the people that I work with and also setting boundaries, which those are both really, really, really hard things to do. And it took me a really, really long time to get here, but that's kind of where I am right now. And also, we do try to do a lot of work in the community, and it's been a lot harder financially this year because so many things have been different. Because, when you want to do things for the community, you want to find like a financial, like a way to do it with money. Like how can you support your community with money? And we had to get really creative this year with how can we do that? And how can we basically use our voice to support the community and find a way for the community to help do the financial part, because like, for example, we've been doing cookie donations for schools, cookie and coffee donations for schools. And I would really love for all of those donations to come from my own pocket or from the bakery's pockets, but that's just not realistic this year. And so, or maybe, you know, not all the time ever, but so we found a way, you know, as like, you know, I'm a business owner and I'm a citizen of the community, and I want to help, especially in really, really challenging times, but it's sometimes really hard to know how to help. And so I decided that we would take donations from the community, financial donations, and then channel that into making cookie and coffee donations for schools. So we are making the structure for the donations to happen, but that money isn't coming from us. And again, that's a way to like set boundaries to say, like, financially, we just like, I have to keep a stable business. I have to be able to pay my employees. And so financially, I can't do this alone, but how can we create structure and a system for the community to help us do it?
Maggie shared a cute little story about making pumpkin donuts. Maggie, you said that you used whole cloves. Do you mean cloves of, I'm only familiar with cloves of garlic. What did you put in the donuts?
So I don't know exactly what cloves are, but there are ground cloves and cloves, and my mom's friend Katie didn't specify ground cloves, so I just thought, oh, I'll put in some cloves, and I found cloves and I put them in.
Did they still taste okay?
Yeah,
We picked out the cloves.
Oh, good. Okay. I was waiting to hear about how that ended up. Like, did you just bite down on them? That probably wouldn't be very delicious.
And then Theta has a question. Do you hope to open more bakeries someday?
I just don't think so. I think that I really am a 1 or 2 bakery kind of girl. I really like to, you know, I really love to try to make a difference. And so you see there are so many businesses that have so many locations and they're all over the place. And I'm always so impressed. And I think that's very cool. And I want to make a difference as much as I can, and also make delicious treats for as many people as I can. But I think that what's really special about Goldenrod, and something that I really love and have to remind myself of, is that you can make a big difference for a smaller amount of people, or you can make a smaller difference for a big group of people. And so what I really, really love about the size of what I'm doing right now is that we really get to know the people that we're working with, and we really get to know the people that we're making pastries for. And to me, making that bigger impact for a smaller group of people is more fulfilling to me than being a huge business. So I'll just keep writing cookbooks and talking to people on Zoom calls like this, but I think that I have enough bakeries.
Yeah, Max, what's your question?
Is running a bakery hard?
That's a great question. It is definitely the hardest thing I've ever done. Well, maybe that's a tie between running a bakery and writing a cookbook. They're both very hard, but it is really hard because there's so many things that I never even thought about that I would have to do. So I have to find the right people to work with. I have to order all of my ingredients. I have to go to the bank a lot. I thought that I could just come to work and make pastries, but there's so many things that I have to do that I never even thought about. And it is really hard. It's really hard when, like, maybe people don't get along, or when you have to close your store, kind of like how school got closed and you had to go home. Like I had to close my bakeries and we had to go home, and that was really hard. So it is really hard, but I really, really love it. And so it's worth it. So I really enjoy it, but it is really hard. Yeah, that's a really good question.
We have another great question from Avery Kirkland. Do you have any tips for how to make progress on your long-term goals while being busy with daily mandatory tasks?
Wow. Okay. That's a very good question. Yes, I think that there are always going to be mandatory daily tasks, but I think that you have to like carve out the time for yourself to say, like, I'm trying to do this right now. So I really, really want to start my second book, but it's just been so busy at work and it's been so busy just in my own life. And so I just have to like, this is how I do it. If there's something I know I really, really want to do, for me, it's writing a second book. And the first step of that is writing, like, it's called a proposal. And so that's where I kind of write like an overview of what the book will be about. And so I keep a tab open on my computer that says book 2. And that's like in my Google Drive. It's a Google Doc. And so whenever I'm at my computer and which I spilled milk in my computer this weekend, so I don't recommend doing that. But anyway, so I always just know that when I'm looking at my computer and I have all of these things that I have to do, and I have to, like you said, mandatory daily tasks, I do all of those. But then like if I have a few minutes, then I see that tab is always open. And it's that long-term goal of my book 2. And I know that like that's just going to be sitting there and kind of like haunting me until I get to it. And you know, there are like bigger long-term goals, like for example, like I told you all that I really wanted to write a cookbook from the time I was super, super young. And so that's something that like I couldn't keep a tab open on my computer for 25 years. And so it was just something that whenever I made a big decision in my life, like my first job, I knew that I wanted to write a cookbook and I loved food. So I made sure that the first job I got was working in a kitchen. Or my first job was actually at a grocery store, but it was with food. And then every job from there, I knew that like I wanted to work in food and I loved food. So every time I had that choice to get a different job or to study something in college, like I studied food science. And so that was a way for me to get like a little bit closer to the goal of working in food for the rest of my life, hopefully the rest of my life. And so like those are two different, like my long-term goal of a second book, I always have it in front of me when I'm working on my computer. So I always remember like, okay, Angela, if you have 5 or 10 extra minutes today, you can work on this. Or the really, really long-term goals, just every big decision that you make in your life, how can you get a little bit closer to your long-term goal? That is that. Any other questions? These are really, really good questions.
Maggie's so sweet. She was asking what time this ends, and we said it'll end by 7. She said she doesn't want it to end.
Oh, Maggie, come hang out with me. I wish we could, hopefully, at some point we can all do this together in the same room, and I can meet all of you, but this is like very fun for me, and I hope that it's helpful for you too. Here's one really cool thing about my book that I really love. Oh, I just remembered another thing that's cool about it. Okay. So here's a picture of Danielle, and Danielle is, she was my first person who started working for me at the bakery, and she is also my husband's sister. So she's my sister-in-law, and she just happens to be a pastry chef. So that worked out very well for me. And we have been working together for 5.5 years, and yeah, so I really like that picture. But then the other thing that I thought about is that these pages right after this picture of me and Danielle is an essay that my mom wrote. And oh, well, you get the idea. It's these 2 pages and the other page. And my mom's a really, really great writer, and we have a lot of fun baking together and cooking together. We kind of like never know who's the boss in the kitchen. I always think I'm the boss. She always thinks she's the boss. And she is one of my best friends. And so I asked her if she would write an essay for my cookbook. And she said, well, I guess, but what do you want me to write about? And I said, I just want you to talk about cooking with significant women in your life. And so she wrote about her aunts and her mom, and she wrote about my other grandma on my dad's side, and they all had very interesting lives. And so like this one kind of cool story that I had completely forgotten that she had written, and she wrote this over a year ago now. So there was like this virus that we're dealing with right now. There was a different one, but it was like in 1918. So we're in 2020 right now. There was one in 1918 too. And my grandma was alive then, and my mom wrote about it in this book. So, which was so wild because, you know, we never thought we would ever live through something like this again. And she wrote about how my grandma was the only person in her family who didn't get sick. She was only 6 years old, and she had 2 siblings and her parents, and she took care of them when they got sick, and she was the only one who didn't get sick. And so she was making them hot chocolate and cooking the meals for them, and she was only 6 years old. And I thought that was such a cool thing that she put in here, and like what an unusual thing to read now that we're in this situation now. But I really, really like this essay. I should find a way to share it with you all. Or if you're ever in the store, you can just grab the book and read it. It's at the library too. But it's one of my favorite parts of the whole book because you get to read a lot about like history and the ways that people used to preserve food and cook it. And it's really important to me to have all these stories about my family published in this book so that I can always read through them. And my mom did a really good job too.
That's so sweet and strange, the coincidence with the virus
Yeah.
100 years ago.
Kind of spooky.
Or it's Alana, sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name. She asked what the cookbook's title is.
Very good question. I should be better about saying that. It's called Perfectly Golden, and I'll show you the cover.
Cute.
Perfectly Golden, adaptable recipes for sweet and simple treats. And so my business is called Goldenrod Pastries, so that the title's kind of a play on that. So Perfectly Golden, Goldenrod Pastries. And I really like the picture on the back. It's a chocolate cake, and taking a bite out of it with my hands because I just really love to eat with my hands. So I don't know if anybody else does. I probably shouldn't tell you to do that, but I think it's the best way to eat.
So something that we do when we code a lot is we have to do a lot of trial and error. So we'll write some code and it won't really work, and then we'll have to just keep trying and trying. It's a very frustrating process. Well, when you bake and you make new recipes, I bet you have to try a lot too. So how do you get past the frustration, and how do you work through that?
Well, once you've been doing something once you know, well, okay. I just know that I want something to be really, really good, and I want to really love it. And so it's worth all of the hard work and the failures to get it right. And I never really get upset with myself about it because I just know that eventually I'll figure it out. And I think that you have to be kind of like kind to yourself and just say, okay, well, that wasn't good. I guess I have to start over. And a lot of the times, I don't know enough about coding, but a lot of the times with baking, I can kind of see where things went wrong. And so I can say like, oh, like I made a cake today that I haven't made for probably 6 years. And instead of making a really, really big batch of it, because in the store, we make like enough for, I don't know, 50 cakes at a time. Instead of doing that, because I wasn't super confident that it was going to work out, I made enough for 1 cake. And it wasn't very good. It was fine, but I kind of know that like next time, I maybe need to add like some lemon or some more sugar or less baking soda. It just wasn't very good. And so I know that like what I need to do to change it next time. And it doesn't make me feel bad because it's not my fault. It's just something that like didn't work out. And so I need to try it again. So I think just reminding that like it's not your fault, that like if you're trying something new, if you're trying some new code, you're working on a new project, or I'm baking something new, it's new. So sometimes it just doesn't work out. Whoops, sorry. Sometimes it just doesn't work out, and that's okay. And so I'm really easygoing about that. I know that some people I work with and have worked with in the past are get a little more stressed out about it, but I think that you just really have to like trust that you're going to get it right. And your work is going to be so much harder if you beat yourself up about it. Like if you tell yourself that like, oh man, I really messed that up, I really failed, like I can't believe I didn't do a good job on that, like it's going to be so much harder to pick yourself up and start over than it would be if you just said, all right, well, that didn't work, and move on. So yeah, at some point you kind of get to the point where it feels like, what's going to go wrong, or how you can fix it pretty easily. But failures happen. It's not even a failure. I don't even know what the right word is. You just have to start over sometimes, and that's okay. A failure sounds so bad. Sometimes you just have to start over.
Yeah, Elspeth.
So I feel like I should preface this by saying that I'm a much better coder than I am baker. But
yes,
when I'm baking, I feel like I have to have very, very precise measurements and follow the recipe to the letter, or the magic baking chemistry doesn't happen. And coding can be a lot the same way, in the precision that I need. But I find that I get a lot faster at solving the problems and, coding more quickly the more that I did it. And so my question for you is that true for baking too? If I keep doing it, will I get faster and have more of a gut feeling about how to solve a problem or measure things, or am I always going to be there with my little scale?
Yeah, for sure. So it will get easier, and you will be able to tell like what you can kind of change out. I don't even know if that's possible with coding because I don't do it, but I can look at a recipe. I'm like, okay, well, it calls for this kind of milk. Well, I don't have that, so I can do this instead. Or like, you just kind of figure out what you can do. And one really cool thing that I've seen, it's kind of weird to publish a book in April. I was like, well, this is, a lost cause because nothing's happening in the world. But what's been really cool is that people are at home a lot more, and they're just doing home stuff a lot more. And one very, very cool thing that I've seen is people, for example, I'll tell a story of one particular person, and we went to high school together. I'm not super close with her, but it's been cool to watch her baking evolution even since April. So she had never baked before. She had never made like cinnamon rolls or anything like that before, pies, nothing. And so now, however many millions of months later, 6 months later, and this is all through social media, I can see that she's like, okay, I'm gonna take, for example, there's like a free form pie recipe in the book, and she didn't have like the same kind of fruit in that recipe, or that's used in that recipe. So she made the crust from that recipe, she took the fruit from a different recipe, and then she took the crumble from the crumble bun recipe. And this is somebody who had never baked before. And I just thought it was so cool that like through this period of time of just like being home, and she's like, well, I guess since I'm here, this is the thing I'm going to teach myself. And it's been very cool to see. There have been multiple things that examples of that I've seen where people, I mean, I haven't been stuck at home, so I don't know what it's like to learn a new craft during this time. But I think that for me, I definitely have a lot more of freedom with what I'm doing in baking. I know that it does have to be really precise, but once you kind of get a rhythm for it, you can kind of break the rules. And outside of myself, it's been cool to see people who have just started baking this year, and they have already started to kind of like break the rules and have gotten faster and it's become easier for them. So yes, it's possible. These are very good questions. Anyone else?
What's your favorite recipe from your book?
My overall very favorite recipe. Well, I mean, as I like flip through, I find them all. Well, this is a cool one, and then I'll tell you my very favorite one. So these are really fun to make. They're called turtle cookies, and my mom made these a lot growing up, so she would make them in the summer. She was very adamant about not turning on the oven on super hot days, which I was like, it doesn't matter, I just want cookies, turn on the oven. But she was the one baking, and so she would make these cookies in a waffle iron, and it was like a traditional old school waffle iron, not like a Belgian waffle iron or anything. And so it's like a brownie batter basically that she would like drop spoonfuls into the waffle iron, and they cook in like 60 seconds. And then she would put peanut butter frosting on them. So that's one of my favorite like technique recipes that I think is pretty cool. And then this is my like all-time favorite recipe in here. It's a peach coffee cake. And it has like a cinnamon roll dough on the bottom and then peaches and crumble on top. And my grandma Garbacz, it was her recipe and she taught me how to make it, and I'm the only one from the family that like she taught how to make it. And she was one of my really great best friends, and so yeah, I love that recipe. And it's a really the intro for that recipe is, I won't get into it now, but it's a sad one. So if you're really feeling like being sad sometime, you should read that.
Oh.
Yeah. My favorite recipes are always the ones that are the most like meaningful and have great memories attached to them. Because that food is like all about memories, I feel like, and my memories are all about food. So that's where I am.
Maggie, I like the ears. Hi, Aspen, do you have a question? Nope, just pop it on. Good to see your face. Akriti, I think if you're chatting with us, you're muted, but you might be chatting with your mom. Okay. So we usually try to end this. You've already given such great advice just about empowering women and just a lot of good advice about how to overcome failure, but we usually like to end just on a good note of, oh, we got a new question from Theta. What's your favorite flavor of cake to make? And then we'll end on a piece of advice.
Well, that's a good question. I can't choose a favorite cake. They're all too delicious, but I will tell you about a really, really good cake that maybe you haven't heard of. It's called a hummingbird cake, and it does not have real hummingbirds in it, but it is like it's a southern recipe from like the southern part of the United States, and it is a cake with banana, pineapple, coconut, and pecans. And I really, really love that cake, especially with like cinnamon frosting. Sometimes I just bake it with sugar on top and no frosting at all, and that's one of my favorites.
That sounds delicious.
Yeah. Oh, somebody asked if I use fondant. No, I do not use fondant. So fondant is like edible Play-Doh basically that sometimes people will, it's made out of sugar and it'll be like rolled out and put over a cake for a really like smooth finish. You can do really bright colors with it and do very like intricate designs with it. But like I said earlier, I always try to make things and work with ingredients that I really love to eat, and I don't love to eat fondant, so I don't use it because it's just not something that I'm passionate about.
Maggie has made baked cheesecake with her grandma. That's cool. Have you ever made baked cheesecake?
Yep, we have a recipe in here too. We make it at the store all the time. It's delicious. Kind of a hard thing to make though. It's very impressive.
Do you have a least favorite pastry?
Probably. Why do I really dislike? Well, in pastry school, we had to learn how to make something called an opera cake, and it's really, really thin layers of cake, like really, 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 really thin. And it's hazelnut cake and coffee buttercream and chocolate. And I think it had like a curse on me or something, and I always ruined it. And then we had to choose out of a hat, like different things to make for our very final project. And I chose opera cake. And I mean, it was one of the worst things I've ever made in my whole life for my very final project of pastry school. And to make matters worse, I don't know if you've ever watched like baking shows where they make like big show pieces out of sugar, like big, like three-dimensional things out of sugar. Well, we had to make one of those too. And I dropped my tray of opera cake on my sugar showpiece, my three-dimensional sugar showpiece, and I shattered my sugar showpiece, and I dropped all of my opera cake on the ground, and all I could do was just laugh.
Oh no.
So yeah, that's my least favorite pastry.
Everyone's asking such great questions. We have one from Natalie.
I know they are.
What's your easiest recipe?
I always tell people start with cookies. That's a really good place to start. So cookies are always a good place to start.
Max wants to share that he loves to bake, and even if his mom is still learning, and he's wanting to make a peanut butter penguin cookie. Ooh. What is the penguin? Does that mean like chocolate frosting? I'm not familiar with what that means. Or just shaped like a penguin. Which one, Max?
It's a peanut butter cookie, and then it says maybe it's a type of chocolate, but we don't have it, so I'm just gonna drizzle regular chocolate over it.
Yeah. Does it look like a penguin?
Yeah, it's basically a penguin shaped cookie with chocolate.
Yum, that sounds delicious.
Well, I gotta look this up. I love penguins.
Theta asks if you like to bake muffins. Her mom makes really good cinnamon muffins.
Yeah, I love to make muffins, and a cinnamon muffin sounds good. Just last night at home, my husband said, well, I really wish I had a blueberry muffin and I could put butter on it. And since then, all I can think about blueberry muffins. So yeah, I love muffins. No, I do not make cake pops. That is another thing that if I don't love it, I can't make it. And I don't love them for some reason. I just don't love to make them or eat them. They're very cute.
I keep reading all the questions because it seems like you're really far away in the kitchen, but you can probably read them all yourself.
I can kind of, yeah. I do make macaroons. Those are really fun to make. Really fun. Once you figure it out, before we got started, I was talking to Akriti about them and her mom, and they were really hard for me to learn how to make. They're very like, you just have to get them just right. But once I figured it out, they're really fun to make.
Ooh.
What's the most popular item at the bakery? Statistically, the macaroons are the most popular item at the bakery. We sell the most of them out of anything else, which every month when I see those statistics come through, I'm always like, it'll be cinnamon rolls this month. But it's always macarons, which always blows my mind. But yeah, it's my favorite fruit pie to make. Well, I am getting very excited for Thanksgiving because I bake every single pie that we sell for Thanksgiving, and we usually make like 400 pies. And so I'm getting very excited because for the last 5 Thanksgivings, we've only had one oven. And now, I don't know if you can see it, but I have a bottom oven and I have a top oven. So my pies are going to be done in no time. I really love to make apple pies because I love to peel them and chop them. It is something It gives me blisters on my hands and it takes forever, but it is a project that I really, really love to do. So I am very excited to make apple pies.
Yum. I love your comment, Maggie. I feel like all grandmas are such good cooks. So we have about a minute left. So Angela, if you have any parting advice, yeah, we'd love to just wrap this up and then we'll introduce who's going to be speaking next week. So
Yeah, I think that, I mean, obviously I'm a baker, so I really love it. But I think the most important thing to take away from this that is something that has really, really helped me in my life is to always remember to build really good relationships with people and to be a really positive person in other people's lives. So how can you inspire other people, your friends, your family members, to do what they really love and listen to them? And when they tell you about something that they really love, listen to them and just always try to be a really good friend and always try to be that person that inspires somebody else to keep doing what they really love or to try something new that they might end up really loving, because they'll always remember that you were the person who listened to them and you were the person who encouraged them to try something that they really love. And then somebody will just do the same thing for you. So always do what you love and always remember to encourage and inspire other people to do what they love.
oh, I love that. That's such great advice. Thank you so much for speaking to our girls today. This has been really fun. And once
Yeah,
again,
thank
for
you.
everyone, this video is going to be posted, so feel free to share this later with people you think might enjoy it. Next week, next Thursday, we're going to be doing a bit of an earlier event. So at 4:30 p.m., Jenny Kim is going to come chat with us. She works in the tech field, so she's going to come chat about what it's like to code and do product management, which is a little bit different than just a straight coding job. So if you're interested, we would love if you joined us next week. Otherwise, Akriti, if you have any other comments to make, I think this will wrap it up. So we appreciate you all coming. This has been really fun. I definitely loved hearing about bakery and your work starting the business. So
Thank you for the awesome questions. I feel like sometimes people don't ask a ton of questions or they're shy or ask the same questions, and I will always remember all of these great questions. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Angela. Thanks for coming. And thanks everyone for joining in.
Have a good night.
You
Bye.
too. See ya. Bye everyone. Bye Theta. Bye Aspen.